Let's play a game of impossible riddles.
Okay, all right. I bet I'm going to lose.
You probably will. Before recording, I removed 2 things from the small end table in my living room. What were they?
Yeah, that's a Bilbo question. What do I got in my pocket?
They're kind of weird things, is the hint. The first hint.
A Mylar blanket, like a space blanket thing. Like the big foil-looking one.
Like in Star Trek?
Yeah, like a little camping blanket.
No, that's insane.
Well, yeah, but you said it was weird.
Yeah. Okay. One of them comes in a jar.
Pickled okra.
No, that item was Luxardo cherries that I just sometimes snack on because I'm a monster.
Wow, yeah, that's pretty weird.
The other item is a weed pen.
Oh, I almost guessed a pipe.
That I would have given it to you.
Okay. Well, I was almost close.
That was impossible riddles. I mostly just wanted to use this voice.
Yeah, listeners, chime in. Let us know if you want to hear more impossible riddles, or if you never want to hear it again.
That's
just let us know.
fine. I can just die.
They can just do that voice for other things.
This could just be my new voice. I clearly miss DMing. I think that's the problem.
Yeah, you gotta get those voices out there.
Somehow. Okay, what are you teaching me today?
Today I'm going to teach you about Cambodia. It's also called, so I learned that this was like the Khmer pronunciation of it, or the native pronunciation of it is Kampuchea. In this time period, they go through some renamings, and one of those is Kampuchea. And that comes from, and it never occurred to me because I had seen this word before, and they just don't look that similar in English. I guess they start with the same.
It's close, yeah.
It just didn't click in my brain, though, that they were that close. And so once I read that, I was like, oh, okay, Kampuchea, Cambodia, like, all right. But that's what we're going to be learning about, and with a focus on the devastating conflict that they've gone through in their, not that recent history anymore, but in the 20th century, centered around the state of democratic Kampuchea and all the turmoil that went on there. For a while, they had a revolutionary Marxist-Leninist state. So they had some communism happening. They also had some very terrifying variants of it, and we'll get into it, basically. One thing I do want to add is that this is going to be very survey level, all right, very broad strokes. I think Americans and really most people outside of Southeast Asia are, we're pretty ignorant regarding Cambodian history.
Yeah, I don't know anything. I was going to say, is this the one that got, what's his name, mad? Noam Chomsky, but I think that was a different place.
Well, it does get him in trouble because one of the things he talks about at some point in his career is East Timor is the place you're thinking of.
That's what I was thinking of, yeah.
But he drew a lot of distinctions and said, look at the press. They're all focused on the evils and the death and destruction happening in Cambodia because that's our enemy. But they're not focused on all the deaths that they're doing in East Timor. That was his argument. And then people were like, well, to me, bro, it sounds like you're denying all the bad shit that Cambodia was doing. So that got him in trouble.
Okay.
But you're right. We just don't know a whole lot. Mainly, if you do know about Cambodia as an American or maybe just a Westerner in general, it's usually in relation to the Vietnam War. And so I found this an interesting topic to dive into. I didn't know that much about it. Really, the only figure that I knew going into this was there was a guy named Pol Pot.
Yeah, that's the only guy I've heard of, like, at all.
And that he was bad.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I got. So we're gonna try to start from scratch, do a broad overview. Maybe it'll be a springboard for future dives into because there's a lot going on. So it's also a tragic tale. So, keep up your jokes. I know a few, listeners or former listeners maybe didn't, they're like,
they're gone now.
They're like, they joke too much. But I think you should keep it up because otherwise it's just going to be depressing. So.
Okay. Well, if you made it past the goblin witch voice, then you're good. All the not fun people have left.
Yeah, there we go. Now this is for the real ones. All right. We are going to start the timeline just to give a little bit of a background on where Cambodia is and everything. We already said Southeast Asia. Going back to ancient times, you had the Khmer Empire, which was centered on Cambodia. This is from, ancient times, 802 to 1431, long time ago. Not the feature of our show, but just to mention it as the backdrop. It was this vast and sprawling, mighty empire. It was doing ancient empire stuff. It was growing and building shit and declining and falling into obscurity, all that stuff.
Gotcha. And listeners, just so you don't feel bad, I did just have to Google where Cambodia is. It is between Thailand and Vietnam and south of Laos. So kind of nestled in between all those South Asian countries, or Southeast Asian.
And really all of that was Khmer Empire stuff back in the day. So they had this kind of ancient thing to look back on. It's man, remember when we were cool? We were the Khmer Empire. That's a historical thing for them.
Gotcha.
All right. So then that kind of, collapses or falls into obscurity, really. And for a while, they're just the Kingdom of Cambodia, kind of hobbling along afterward. And they are increasingly dominated by those neighbors that you talked about, in particular, Vietnam and Thailand, what they called Siam back then. And so they're encroaching and they're just beating them in wars and stuff. They're on the downhill slide. And it's in 1863 when their king, the king of Cambodia, a guy named Norodom, decided to turn to some outside help, someone to protect them from getting owned like that.
So colonizers,
right? Now, let's welcome to the stage some friends of the show. Now,
colonizers of the week.
Now you called out, who their neighbors were and everything. So given that information, and this is kind of a quiz thing here, and stuff we've covered before, which country do you think they called on to come colonize them?
So my guess is because France was so big in Vietnam, I bet they called on the British.
No.
Fuck.
But you knew the fact, so that's good. The reasoning wasn't there though, but it was France.
Okay, so they called on France. Well, that seems shitty, but okay.
Yeah, they're just you guys are already setting up here, right?
Come on in.
Bring us in. So yeah, Napoleon III's Second French Empire makes them a French protectorate,
Great.
part of the Second French Colonial Empire, and this keeps the monarchy in power. It keeps, them nominally independent from Vietnam and Thailand and everything. But the problem is they're just a French puppet at this point.
Independent is in quotes.
Yeah. Real authentic lunch meats. This time period is called the French Protectorate from 1863 to 1947.
That is the most twee possible way to describe colonization.
Whoa, so I've heard this word before, but what does it mean? Is it gentle or candy coated, sugar coated?
Zooey Deschanel, that is the definition of twee.
An actress?
Cutesy and just overly saccharine.
Okay, I got you. All right. Yeah, I can see that then. Okay,
there you go.
Now I know how to say twee. French protector, they're fully colonized. They were just used as a giant rice plantation, rubber plantation sort of thing. And even more so than neighboring Vietnam, they were deliberately kept from development. It's like open veins, that sort of stuff of we're going to build everything just for extraction. But even, I think beyond that is they would bring in Vietnamese people who had been educated in the Vietnamese colonial system, like part of that like class of people to be colonial administrators and stuff. They would bring them in like from other countries like Vietnam and neighboring countries, and like those were going to be your administrative class. You weren't going to develop your own at all. Like they were really keeping them down. It was basically just racism. Like they, within their own racism of like, we think everyone from Indochina, as they called it, was inferior. Within that, they had tiers, and they thought that Vietnamese people were like better than Cambodian people.
Is it like sub-colonialism? Is that what it's called in Open Veins?
Oh, yeah, that's what they call it when, if in their example, Brazil was like dominating the other countries there and being like the U.S.'s kind of little brother.
Yeah.
Enforcing. And in this case, it wasn't so much, I don't think that, because it wasn't like the Vietnamese were like, as a national project, doing this. It's just that, they had people there working, doing colonial jobs.
Yeah. More of an ethno kind of tension thing.
So yeah, that goes on for a while. They're the French protectorate. They get integrated into what they call French Indochina, which is just kind of a merger, a super group of Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos in 1887. And then it's during this time period that you have the foundation of the Indochinese Communist Party.
Okay, this sounds familiar.
Yes, this is from our Vietnam episode, part 1. It had to be in part 1 because it's pretty early. This is before, this is when they're still French. This was, the one founded by Ho Chi Minh. We're going to, find a way to build communism all throughout Indochina. A little thing called World War II happens.
Oh, man.
And so it's a complicated story because, like, they're run by France, which becomes Vichy France, the German puppet state. But then Japan invades them anyway, even though Japan's in there, like, a lot. So it causes some tensions. But out of that, the previous king of Cambodia, they still get, like I said, they still have the monarchy or whatever, dies. And they put in place a king that they're like, this guy's 18. I mean, he's a chump. We'll push him around. He'll do whatever we say because he's just a kid, A guy called Norodom Sihanouk. He will literally be there the rest of the story.
Okay, man.
He's installed as king in 1941. Yeah, in 1993 is when we'll last see him on the stage.
Holy shit. Buckle in.
Yeah, the guy has some staying power. Or doesn't really, but he gets the limelight. All right, so Sihanouk is how I'm going to call him the rest of the time. That's how he's known. And so he's king in the French protectorate, which is briefly occupied by Japan during World War II. And the whole time that he's king in that situation, he's campaigning on the international stage for independence. All right. His big deal is, I want Cambodia to be sovereign, make its own decisions, to be its own country. Crucially, with me in charge.
Yeah, I was going to say, not too much sovereignty.
He is, yeah, he's definitely, and you'll see him morph into and go through ideologies like outfits.
He's young. He's finding himself.
He's experimenting.
Yeah, he's only 18.
Well, I think for me, the common thread that we'll see with Sihanouk is he wants to be in charge.
Yeah, okay.
He thinks he knows what's best, and he's the only one to guide the country, and he'll put on whatever outfit he needs to do that.
Great.
He's campaigning for that. It's in 1945, at the tail end of the war, that you see the formation of something called the Khmer Issarak. And I should say something about this term because I've used it a couple times, Khmer. This is like an ethnic group in that area. And then within that, there are like kind of sub-ethnic groups of like Khmer this, Khmer that. And it's also used like as an adjective. So it's like, in this case, the Khmer Issarak are like these rebels. So the Issarak is like denoting, okay, these are the Khmer rebel people. They're a loose collection of anti-French, anti-colonial groups. They want Cambodian independence, but past that, they have all these different factions that really can't agree on much else.
Gotcha.
They have non-communist, kind of like nationalist groups, and they have communist ones.
Great.
So a mixed bag. The communist ones were influenced by and even kind of like recruited and set up by the Viet Minh from Vietnam.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they were kind of doing some world revolution stuff right next door. They were taught like Marxism, Leninism in political schools that Vietnam had set up in Cambodia. So like the communist activists had gone over and like started doing their, as it always starts, book clubs, man.
The most subversive thing.
And so it sets up this interesting relationship that we'll see carry forward that has pretty dire consequences for the whole story. And that's that the Cambodian communists from this point on, and really even in the Indo-Chinese Communist Party, were always seen as, by the Vietnamese, and felt by themselves, to be the junior partners in the relationship, the little brother.
Yeah.
And so when they are advocating for their independence and stuff, and, we want to do this, we want to try to carry this out, one of the things that came to a head soon was like, should we be working with these groups? But then eventually, like, should we be working with the government? And Vietnam was much more accommodating. They were like, the conditions in your country, they're not really ripe for revolution, national liberation yet, like they are here. We're the main story. You guys, like, kind of, work toward it. Don't just lay down. But help us out right now because it's kind of our deal, and then we'll get to you.
Main character syndrome.
Yeah, and then, and the Cambodian communists really felt that strongly, and that carries forward, I think, in how they see their relationship or antagonistic relationship sometimes with Vietnam. And this is kind of where it begins. So anyway, you have the Khmer Issarak, these rebels, fighting against Sihanouk and his government, and fighting against the French occupation, the French colonizing, all that. And later this kind of splits. One of the groups becomes the Kampuchean People's Revolutionary Party. All right, this will eventually become the Communist Party of Kampuchea.
Okay, so the communists split off.
Yeah, the communists are like, we're cooler than you guys. And this is in 1951. This is a split within that Indo-Chinese Communist Party too. So this is when they set up the Workers' Party of Vietnam that becomes the Communist Party. They're all just kind of like, hey, we need to focus on us. You need to focus on that. All the different countries.
I need to take some me time.
Yeah. Well, this is also in 1951 is when things are really heating up in terms of the Indo-Chinese or the, how do you call it?
The Sino split?
Not yet. That's coming. That's a big part of the story. But the Vietnam getting independent from France, the Indochina War, that's about to super heat up and like blow up. So Sihanouk is king under the French until 1953, when, because of the deteriorating situation in Vietnam, France is like, hey, we're cutting loose, we're getting out, like we're not keeping colonies over here. They're about to get their ass kicked at Dien Bien Phu, and have to go and negotiate like the independence of Vietnam and all that stuff, as well as Laos, as well as Cambodia. So Sihanouk finally gets his deal of being independent.
How's it go?
Well, he talks a big game. He tells everybody, I'm great. I'm going to make sure that we're not taken over by the communists like they have over there in Vietnam.
Okay.
I'm going to make sure we have a democracy and rule of law and all this. He's really only interested in democracy and rule of law insofar as it works for keeping him in power.
Yeah, yeah.
He's at his core authoritarian, and anytime there's any dissent, he quashes it.
Democracy as long as you vote for me. Also, you can't vote for me because I'm a king. That's not how kings work.
Well, he's a king for a while, for a couple years, and then he abdicates in favor of his dad.
Okay.
And enters politics, becomes prime minister instead.
Okay, that's pretty nuts. Okay.
So like I said, like he doesn't care. It's like, oh, I'll do it as king. Oh, never mind. It's not cool anymore. I'll do it as prime minister.
Weird.
Yeah. So he's He's just a chameleon, man. And yeah, like I said, he does not take opposition at all. Anybody who opposes him, he jails them or he kills them, whatever works.
Yep.
He technically allows there to be this like socialist party, but he frequently like puts them in minor posts, or he like kills one of their party members and is just like, I don't know how that happened,
Weird.
So pretty mean guy. His whole platform at that time was what he was calling Buddhist socialism.
Okay, this doesn't sound very Buddhist or very socialist.
Right, which to me sounds good, but it's
it does.
actual what he actually good branding, but not good carrying out of it. It was just like kind of like maybe social democracy type welfare state stuff, but with that iron fist behind it of don't fucking cross me. He's super anti-communist.
Yeah, clearly.
The rebels are still out there. They're pretty small at this point. They don't have many in their ranks. They're not really getting that much traction. But Sihanouk helps them out.
Okay.
He doesn't mean to.
Okay.
But basically, he decides that he needs more rice for cheaper prices. And these peasants just aren't selling him rice at good enough prices for him to make a profit and afford all of his luxuries. So he sends in the military, or his top general guy, a guy named Lon Nol, who will also be a character going forward, sends him in, and he's like, okay, go in there and do ramassage, which is a term, like a vocab term here. Ramassage means where you show up with the army, you point guns at the peasants, and you say, sell us the rice for this much money. And they're like, that's like a tenth of the price. What are you talking about? And they're like, yeah, well, you also get to live,
I don't like raw massage.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not like a deep tissue massage. All right, raw massage, not good. Yeah. So they start doing that, and it's in Samlaut in one of their provinces that the peasants decide, actually, fuck that. We're going to fight back.
Awesome. Great.
So that's in 1967. It kicks off, it's kind of the prelude to, but I consider it kind of the opening salvo of the Cambodian Civil War, which is the war between the communist rebels in the countryside against trying to overthrow Sihanouk's government.
Great.
At first, and then their opponent changes later. So that's how it starts out, the Cambodian Civil War. It really starts escalating. That's in 1967. It starts escalating the next year is when it really gets into gear. Another thing that happens in Sihanouk's time is that he gets Cambodia drawn into the Vietnam War in kind of a comedy of errors. Yeah.
Really fucking up.
The thing is that he's like really trying to stay neutral, but his version of staying neutral isn't like, let's try to be nice to everybody and make, not offend anyone. It's more like, oh, let's be nice to this guy. Wait. Let me play this guy up.
Oh,
and
okay.
He just kind of keeps jumping around. And
Too many dates to the prom. Classic.
Yeah. But it's like he's constantly, throwing his drink in each of his dates' face.
Wow, okay.
So here's how it goes. First, JFK, first actually, Ngo Dinh is killed, assassinated in South Vietnam. Basically, the U.S. let that happen, gave it the green light, so to speak. Then JFK is assassinated that same year. This is 1963. And my man Sihanouk was so happy about that he basically just is doing celebrations. Like he's telling people take the day off. Like we're going to do a holiday to celebrate these people dying.
Wow.
And America was like, what the fuck? That's like, our fallen prince or whatever.
Yeah.
So that pisses them off. And then to kind of top that off, he signs this arms smuggling / secret trail deal with China and North Vietnam. So the game was, Cambodia is going to let China bring in weapons through Cambodia and then get that to North Vietnam.
Gotcha.
And then Cambodia was going to be paid they were going to get some sort of a payment I want to say in rice production, as well as getting to keep like 10% of the weapons.
Interesting.
When they found that out, and the secret trail was called the Sihanouk Trail, which just was sort of like the Ho Chi Minh Trail, where Vietnam had like all the secret paths through other countries. This is part of that. So the Sihanouk Trail was in the south, helping them get into South Vietnam. The U.S. hated that.
I bet.
So when they found out about that, they're like, what the fuck? What are you doing? Then he finds out that, he finds a bunch of pamphlets, but he finds out that like China has been spreading communist propaganda in his country.
Uh-oh.
And so he goes and yells at them, and he's like, you fucking assholes. I'm fighting the communists. What are you doing? And they're like, what? We're communists. What do you want us to do?
Yeah, you signed a deal with us.
So he goes back to the Americans.
Oh my gosh.
And tries to, cozy up to them and meets with their ambassadors and tells them, I know you guys are, fighting real hard down there in Vietnam. It's tough. And you're always chasing those National Liberation Front, commonly called the Viet Cong. You're always chasing them over into our country, but you got to stop because the border. Look, I get it. If you need to chase them a few miles in to get them, you can get them. Don't kill my regular villagers, but like you can go after those guys.
Okay.
All right. What do you think the Americans do with that information?
They have fucking free reign now. They just go anywhere they want in Cambodia now, I bet.
Yeah, they take more than a mile. They put together a little bombing campaign. Sickeningly called Operation Menu.
Menu?
Menu, like you go to the restaurant, there's a menu.
No.
The reason it's called that is because the first operation was called Operation Breakfast.
Oh my gosh.
And so they just started calling the subsequent like bombing targets that they were doing lunch, snack, dinner, supper, dessert.
What the fuck, guys?
In addition to being, a very deadly bombing campaign, they kill a lot of people. They drop like 108,000 tons of bombs.
Jesus.
Okay, why are they doing that? So they're going after bases of operation that the NLF and North Vietnamese Army, the PAVN is their acronym, but whatever. They're going after North Vietnamese forces, communist forces that have bases in Cambodia. So they're trying to bomb those. It is also, in addition to being deadly and everything, secret. They're not telling Congress about that, which is illegal. Mm-hmm. This was Nixon basically secretly expanding the Vietnam War.
Great.
It devastates the countryside of Cambodia. I mean, they just turn this place into the surface of the moon.
Fuck.
And it drives more people in that situation. They're living in the countryside, getting bombed to hell. They're either running to the cities that aren't getting bombed, or if they're staying in the countryside, they're teaming up with the communists now. This is a recruitment tool.
Yeah, for real.
Like, fight the guys that are
bombing
killing your people.
Yeah.
So that's Operation Menu, thanks to Sihanouk's not really invitation. I don't, it's he definitely didn't say, "Hey, come bomb my country." But you can't tell the Americans stuff like that. Man.
Yeah, give him an inch, give him a mile. Give him a mile, give him a country.
So obviously that makes Sihanouk really mad.
Yeah.
So he turns toward Vietnam.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he's just bouncing back. I know I just did this, but
it's me again.
And he extends diplomatic recognition to the provisional government in South Vietnam. This is the NLF, like the future, they're kind of the Viet Cong government, I guess, there in Western parlance. He recognizes them, and the Americans get really angry about that.
I'm sure.
And his top general, Lon Nol, he's a very right-wing guy. He does not like any of these moves to like be neutral. He thinks they should be more aligned with the U.S. He doesn't like doing anything with the communists. So this makes him mad too.
Uh-oh, we got a coup on our hands?
We have a coup. Good prediction.
Once you have a mad general, you know what happens.
We have a coup. So March 18th, 1970, Our man Lon Nol launches a coup against Sihanouk while Sihanouk's like traveling abroad.
Did the U.S. help?
Probably.
Okay.
There's not direct evidence of it, but they're pretty happy about it.
I'm sure they didn't mind.
Yeah, they definitely didn't mind, and they definitely step up to support once it's happened.
Yeah, okay.
I think they probably did, but Lon Nol is a complete puppet of the U.S. He's extremely anti-communist, and he sets up a government there called the Khmer Republic, which is just a pro-U.S. military dictatorship.
Woo!
And so he's in charge of Cambodia, Lon Nol is, for like 5 years. That's in 1970. And this is where our friend Sihanouk gets funky.
What, does he get desperate enough to like try communism?
I mean, not himself maybe, but he does team up with them.
Okay.
All right, so all throughout he's been fighting against the communists, you know? He's been like, oh, these guys are terrible, I hate them, I've been fighting a war against them. And he's the one who actually came up with the term that in just normal history we usually use. And there's no problem, I think, with using it, Khmer Rouge. It just means, the red Khmers.
Yeah.
So he goes and teams up with the Khmer Rouge, teams up with the Reds that he's been fighting.
Okay, desperate move.
And they call this alliance the National United Front of Kampuchea, which in French is FUNK.
Great. Love it.
So he got the FUNK now, and they form like a government in exile. Like, we're really in charge. And this is a strange move for the communists, too, teaming up with Sihanouk this way, because they call that government the Royal Government of the National Union of Kampuchea.
Weird. I don't like that.
Yeah, but each one is basically using the other.
Yeah.
Both of them think, hey, when it comes down to it, man, I'm going to take over.
Mm-hmm.
And the acronym for the government's name is also kind of cool. It's grunk.
Grunk. Funkin' grunk. The cool rowdy boys.
So this is a game changer, actually, because Sihanouk, for all his wrongs, was pretty popular.
Really?
The Cambodian people had a monarchy for a long time. It was seen as kind of a national symbol for them. And so he was a popular guy. He, knew how to talk to people, I guess. And him coming into that alliance with the Khmer Rouge really brought in tons more peasants into the civil war against the government. They were like, well, damn, I mean,
the king's on board. I'm in.
Yeah, like this is a big deal,
Okay.
So they start joining and makes it way more popular. And yeah, this is when the civil war heats up to its final stage. Lon Nol orders the North Vietnamese and the NLF troops. He just says, get out. Within 48 hours, I want you gone. No more bases, nothing. And logistically, this is not possible. And he knows this, and he's just trying to start shit with them.
Yeah.
So he starts some more shit with them and says, well, I don't actually want these guys to come attack my cities and stuff, so I'm going to basically hold the ethnic Vietnamese population of Cambodia hostage.
Fuck.
About 400,000 people in a country about 7 or 8 million. And he just starts like doing pogroms against them.
Fuck. That sucks.
Yeah, like the police incite this stuff.
Shocking.
Well, yeah, that's what they do. And so the Khmer Rouge, their leadership meets with Vietnam and says like, can you guys come help? Like we're not strong enough to fight this shit off. This guy's crazy. So they request basically an invasion. And that's what Vietnam does. They invade March 29th, 1970 to help, I guess, the communist side in the Civil War.
Good.
Lon Nol does not think that's good.
I'm sure. I normally don't think invasions are good, but this one I can get behind.
Well, it probably won't be the first. Or won't be the last, rather. Lon Nol requests aid from the United States. Help, I'm being invaded.
Mm-hmm.
and by your enemies. So come on, help me out. And so they start what's called the Cambodian campaign, which is where they send like 50,000 American troops and about that many South Vietnamese troops. They invade. This is in late April 1970. So they go in and start killing people too. They also start up a brutal 3-year bombing campaign. Gotta love a bombing campaign.
Oh, yeah.
It was called Operation Freedom Deal.
Ugh. I mean, better than like snacky time or whatever.
Right, yeah. But in this case, I guess the deal you're getting is the freedom to die.
Yeah.
Freedom from your mortal coil.
Woo.
Because they dropped more bombs on Cambodia than they dropped on Japan in World War II.
Holy shit.
And again, they've turned the countryside into ruin. They're flooding the cities with refugees. They're flooding the communist ranks with new recruits. I mean, it's just tearing Cambodia apart. They're falling further and further into ruin. In 1973, that was 3 years into this carnage, Vietnam starts tapering off its aid to the Cambodian communists. They are now at the negotiating table with the Americans, trying to get them to stop doing things in, bombing their people and stuff. So they're like, hey, we need, we're not going to be heavily involved right now. We're trying to be peaceful. We're doing our thing. And that's where you get that thread again of how come our thing is less important than your thing.
Okay, so did Vietnam like cut a deal of like, hey, like we'll play nice and we'll look the other way while you go fuck up Cambodia?
I don't think it was so much that. I mean, that may be how they sold it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure about the details of their talks, really. But I think that they were trying to present as willing to negotiate position as possible. I mean, the whole name of the game for them was that they needed the Americans to stop. To stop bombing, to stop supplying, to stop being there, occupying the South, because they knew if they could do that, the South Vietnamese government didn't have popular support and would crumble. So it was like, do whatever you can to get them out of here. That was just one of the things. It was like, hey, look, we're not giving guns to your enemies anymore. Like we don't like you, but like we're not also fucking you up over here. So like,
okay, it's like a show of good faith kind of thing.
Yeah, and maybe there was an aspect of it of like, and look, you don't have to deal with us anymore. You can go do your thing over there if you want. We're not involved anymore. That is what they do. This Operation Freedom Deal thing lasts for a long time, and like in the final days of it, with all their material freed up from North Vietnam and from South Vietnam, really from the Vietnam War, the U.S. turns those guns on Cambodia and fucks them up even more.
Oh God. Okay.
So yeah, with those extra resources freed up, and the U.S. escalating its operations in Cambodia, they were able to keep Lon Nol's government propped up for another 2 years, 73 to 75.
Okay.
And that's how they justify it too, because people come back at the government, the U.S. government, and say, you guys were fucking butchers out there. You were turning it into a lunar landscape. And they'll say, yeah, but if we hadn't done that, you would have had the fall of Cambodia 2 years earlier. We saved them for that long.
It doesn't matter. That was already a coup. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, but from their justification, they're like, and you see how bad it got after, after that, which it does. So let's talk about what happens going forward. So Lon Nol's regime is basically falling apart. He's lost control of large swaths of the country. It's only sustained by the massive U.S. bombing and U.S. aid to the capital and the cities. They're just like all the refugees. They're just feeding them rice, and gradually, his legs start to crumble from under him, and the North Vietnamese and grunk forces are able to kind of close in on the capital of Phnom Penh. The phases of the war, it's the big picture is, don't have to get nitty gritty, but the big picture is that North Vietnam does the heavy lifting at first, and then kind of like gradually shifts responsibility onto the Khmer. So along the way, as they're liberating big chunks of the country, we're going to see kind of the first little hints of, hey, what are these guys going to do? These communists, what are they about? And so one of the things they do in liberated areas is they set up, they do land reform.
I like that.
Yeah. So they start equalizing land. The people who hold lots of it, the landlords and all them, they end up with just a little bit.
Great.
And the peasants end up with all this land for themselves.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty good stuff there. They also set up mutual aid teams.
Okay.
So kind of like, because you're doing the land reform in this sort of private way. It's not really collectivized.
Yeah.
But you're kind of setting up like collectives or mutual aid in terms of like labor. If you have to go like to different fields at different times for different crops, like, oh, we'll work on this guy's field today and then this person's field, or tools as well was a big part of it. It's like, oh, let's pool these resources together so we can like have the tools we need to do shit.
Okay, so collectivizing labor and like doing shift rotations and tool libraries, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Cool.
They were also abolishing some things we don't like money.
I hate money.
They abolished money, credit, private property in general.
Great.
One of the interesting things about that, though, was that the reason that they did that, there's kind of interviews later on talked about it. The reason that they did that, especially like money and credit and things like that, the market part of it, was mainly to stop peasants from selling rice to to government forces, but also to the Vietnamese army.
Okay.
They were just like, well, how can we solve that? Well, what if they just get their rice from us? Like, we just distribute that. We set it, we make everything like totally non-market, and it's just like, yeah, you get what you need, hopefully, and there's no, you can't do anything with money here, so you're not going to sell it to someone else. Like, so that way we have enough.
Interesting.
That was their strategy. They also instituted a dress code.
Weird.
Yeah, let me show you their dress code here. See what you think.
Fit check. Oh, okay. I can get down with this. Yeah, I mean, I don't know like how gendered it is, but I like the scarf. That's a good look.
It was intended to have people dress like poor peasants.
Oh, okay.
So you'd have these black clothes, you'd have these red and white scarves called krama, and sandals, just these plain black sandals that were made of tires, actually.
Whoa. I mean, I have a very similar pair of sandals, so I'm into it.
Tire sandals?
I mean, they're not made out of tires. They're more goth and chunky. But, yeah, I mean, the red patterned scarf, it's almost like a gingham pattern, then with, like, stripes at the end. It's cute. It's a good fall look. This is my fall mood board now.
One of the downsides to this was, and this is going to introduce an element of the Khmer Rouge that, I mean, I'm pretty sure how we'll feel about it, is that this was initially, this is sort of a traditional Khmer dress. This was initially a rule, a dress code that was rolled out for the Cham ethnic group, which is like in southern Cambodia. So they're seen as a different ethnic group than the Khmer. So
Okay.
they were like, you guys have to wear this. You have to wear our traditional clothing.
That's kind of shitty. Okay.
And yeah, then they eventually said, let's have everyone do it. It's cool. And it's not universal. I mean, like, they did not literally make everyone wear this, but like they were encouraging it and saying like, you gotta wear this. And yeah.
It was free, I'm sure.
Yeah, this is what they were giving people. Yeah.
It wasn't like, I'll shoot you if you don't wear this scarf.
Right. Now, the reason I bring that up as of the ethnic group thing is this is going to be something that we see with the Khmer Rouge, is that they
favor one ethnic group more.
Yeah, to the point of which they're like, they think that the Khmer are superior.
Ooh, okay, that's not great.
Yeah. So they mix their communism with some with some just racism.
That's not good. We don't like that in our communism. To get that out of there.
It's not where it belongs.
Go put it back in capitalism where it belongs.
Belongs in the dust heap of history. So yeah, that's what they're doing in the liberated areas. And they're marching along. They're closing in on the capital. April 1st, 1975, Lon Nol, he throws in the towel, man. He's like, I resign. He flees to the United States.
Of course.
Yeah, he'll die in California in 1985.
Gives a bunch of speeches, I'm sure.
Yeah, just lives it up. He's fine.
Yeah, he's fine. Don't feel bad for him.
Just a couple weeks later, the Khmer Rouge, the Communist Party of Kampuchea, take power on April 17th, 1975. They ride victoriously into Phnom Penh.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I mean, people think this is pretty good. This is kind of cool. That other guy was an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
They're not currently bombing us, like they stopped.
That's a good start.
Yeah, man, maybe this will be good. Also, do you guys have food? Because we've got like 2 weeks worth of rice rations here.
Oh, fuck.
And you have, like in Phnom Penh, you have like 2.5 million people.
Oh.
Millions of whom, I want to say it's almost like 2 million or like 1.5 million something. Most of them are refugees from the countryside. And so, because this is a very rural country, 8 million people total, most of them living in the countryside. And you got 2.5 million of them here. Like,
fuck. Yeah, that's going to be a problem.
They're faced with just this terrible situation. And it's interesting how they approach this in general, because they're the Communist Party of Kampuchea, but to the people that they're interacting with, they're still very secretive. Even throughout the Civil War, they were only really known as the Angkar, which is the organization.
Oh, so nobody knew they were communist yet?
Right, like the leadership
would,
and the party, real party members, but people who are like working with them and everything, it was just the Angkar.
Interesting.
It was kept under wraps.
Huh, okay.
And then you would kind of find out once they start, doing communism in your place, but they were not really saying it.
Yeah, it's kind of like Fidel did that, right?
Yeah, he was just like, we're not Marxist, we're not communists. I don't know. We're just fighting for freedom. Yeah, no, I just found that really interesting and one of those things that I wanted to do more on Pol Pot and stuff. I didn't think we have time for like a full-on personal dive. But like one of the things that he did, he was born Saloth Sar was his name. And his summary is like he goes to school in Paris, like goes to university in Paris. So he's, educated with and running with like the French communists and stuff there.
Yeah.
Talking theory and all that. And the leadership of the Communist Party of Kampuchea, like this Khmer Rouge, like the center of it, their top leadership are these like students who like studied in France together and like talked their theories out and shit.
Okay.
But he flunks out and comes back, to join in the revolutionary stuff like that. But the interesting thing to me is he does like a dual identity thing for a while. He at some point adopts the name Pol Pot during the revolution, and he's like two people for like, he was this like journalist, academic guy and teacher for a little bit. Because when he comes back, he's like, I don't know what to do. So he does teaching for a little bit. Which, I mean, I guess I get it.
Right, relatable.
Before he joins with the revolutionaries, but people don't know whatever happened to Saloth Sar. And then here you have this random Pol Pot guy who's claiming to be like, just the son of a peasant or something.
Fucking alter ego. Maybe we should have done that. That'd be smart.
Yeah, he kind of alter egos. And then later they reveal like, oh, actually, Pol Pot is Saloth Sar. It's like a season finale reveal.
Okay, interesting.
So they're very secretive. I just think this is an interesting aspect of them. Because we've talked about that with the Bolsheviks before. Not so much of being secretive, but like being distrusting or conspiratorial maybe.
Yeah, because of how they came up.
Mm-hmm. And that's here too is very secretive. And with that, I think comes I don't like the term because I don't like how it's misused in by the agents of capitalism, but an authoritarian approach to things is, hey, we know these things. You just need to do the stuff.
Yep.
You don't need to know the stuff. You just need to do it. Anyway, so they take power. They're in this terrible situation because the country is completely collapsed. It's been bombed to hell. They're overcrowded with refugees. The refugees were dependent on American aid. And then when the convoys got cut off in the midst of the Civil War, the Americans were like flying in Berlin airlift style supplies to feed these people, to keep Lon Nol's regime propped up. And even then, I mean, those guys, like, till the end, this guy's corrupt generals were like skimming off the top even as the country's collapsing. Like, just horrible, you know?
Very cool.
So the Khmer Rouge have an idea.
Okay. What's their great idea?
We got to restart agriculture. We got to start growing shit to feed people. And we can start by emptying this mass of refugees that we have, sending them back to the countryside. Get farming going again. Most of these people are peasants. They're used to it. They know what to do. We get them producing food to feed themselves, to feed the country before we all starve. Get the country back into balance.
Not a bad start. Makes sense. They were probably farmers before.
Yeah, and to me it kind of had like aspects of Kropotkin's Conquest of Bread, of like, of like, go, you know, for a while you're gonna have to garden, man. For a while you're gonna have to grow some shit because we got to survive. You know,
gotta have food.
Just have everyone do some farming. So that was their initial plan, and this would, in addition, kickstart agricultural production and stuff to feed people in the short term, but in the medium to long term, as you intensify that production with collectivization and stuff like that, you're better able to produce more and more of a surplus. And if you start putting together water irrigation projects and getting multiple growing seasons, you can get up to 3 there. If you can get that going, then you'll have so much extra rice and everything else that you can produce the surplus to purchase foreign equipment, to mechanize, to industrialize. So the first goal would be produce enough to fully mechanize agriculture, which of course then is going to make even more. And then you produce enough to fully industrialize.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So that was the plan.
How'd it go?
Well, it goes pretty brutally.
Yeah.
Because they show up to the cities and there are really no exceptions for getting to stay.
Like anyone?
Like anyone.
So, okay, because I've heard of this guy before, Pol Pot, and like it sounded like he was, you know, very pro-peasant, which at first you're like, yeah, but like also very anti-city, which you're like, oh.
Yeah, that's basically true.
Okay. Hate cities. That's bad news for me. I'm a bit of a city pig.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll offer context as to why and stuff as we get into it, but kind of true.
Okay.
Broad strokes, overly simplified.
Gotcha. That's my jam. That's what I do here.
The problem, so without exceptions, we're emptying the cities. There are people who are very old, or there are people who are very sick. There are people in the hospital.
And he still kicks them out?
Yeah.
Fuck.
When people refuse, they are just killed.
Fuck.
Their house is razed to the ground.
Okay. Not great.
People are carrying like their sick children in whatever bag they can find.
Fuck.
To bring them along. People are getting left on the side of the road on the march there. Thousands of people die doing this.
Yeah, fuck this. So
not a good idea. Okay, so the counter argument, or the only defense to that you can really mount is...
Great, let's hear it.
All right, so there's 2 weeks worth of rice. So we've literally got to get people out of here so they can find food somewhere.
Yeah, but you don't need to fucking kick the sick people and the old people out. What the fuck kind of rice can they grow?
Yeah, definitely not like people who could not have kept up or whatever. Like you should have come up with in the moment something. I mean, you can think of like, hey, you and you're going to stay and take care of the sick people. Like, you know.
Yeah.
you can figure that out. It doesn't take a lot of brain power.
That doesn't
to figure
seem
out what
that
to do
hard. Like, yeah, keep the hospitals running. Great, we're done.
Yeah, there are ways around that. But the masses of people, I think the argument is not too out there to say that they were kind of doomed to starvation if they stayed, given the current circumstance.
They were for sure. But like, there has to be a way to like get them to understand that and work with them rather than against them. Like, definitely like get people who want to go first. Like, sure, get them going, get them set up, and then, you know, work with the, because I imagine an issue with like, okay, well, you know, the sick people or the children or the old people can stay, is then you have their family members who also want to stay. I mean, work out a work rotation where they can still visit their loved ones or something, or like maybe they are then the ones that are on staff for the hospital or something. Like, there's gotta be a system here that doesn't result in like mass painful migration for people.
Yeah, for sure. The problem, I think, with the reason why they're not taking that approach goes back to giving the context of why they're anti-city. Part of the move to just evacuate everyone from the cities and go to the countryside, one of the things about that is not so much a temporary measure of we got to eat right now. Like, it was in that sense of like, it's important for immediate survival. But they weren't really intending on bringing the cities back ever. Oh.
Was it very pro-city before? Like Lan and what's his name? Were they all...
Lan Na and Sihanouk?
Yeah.
They were cosmopolitan, you know. They had... Their power base was there. This was seen as the most, you know, pro-American, pro-French sector of society. It was richer.
Yeah.
And there was the age-old resentment of the countryside versus
the decadence.
Yeah, the rich fools in the city.
And you had the history of the corruption with the generals.
And not just that, but before then, the royal family and everything. You know, it was all centered on that. There was that just among the populace. And the Khmer Rouge in particular, the party, had come up with... They do this really like not Marxist thing.
Okay.
All right, we say frequently, which side are you on, right? And we got a side you can be on, you know, a side you should be on and a side you shouldn't be on. That's like our whole deal.
Yeah.
Right? But how do we decide that? Who's on what side?
By who has what?
By who has what and what the social relations or the relations of production, right? Like,
yeah.
If you're the capitalist, this isn't because like you make a certain amount of money, it's because like you own the stuff to make things with. Like,
yes,
you are an owner and you employ people, you buy people for a certain amount of time. Like, that's the distinction. And that's how you tell. It's very scientific. It makes sense. It can tell you important things about how an economy runs.
Yeah. And it is, I mean, I don't want to use the word inclusive because that sounds very like buzzwordy and not quite what I'm going for. But the end result is you have more people on your side that way.
It's big tent.
Yes, that's the word.
The Cambodian communists, I say they did something very not Marxist, is that they divided, they saw their society as divided into two groups too. But they didn't use those distinctions. Their distinction was between the old people and the new people.
Okay, what does that mean?
Here it's very, in my opinion, very reactionary too. Because it wants to go back. Because in this case, the old people are the good people.
Oh, that's weird.
Usually a revolutionary movement will be like in the Soviet Union, it was, we want to create the new Soviet person, right? Who has these socialist qualities and is better. And that was a good thing.
I was going to guess, like, I guess old is like you're still down with the king and down with the lawn guy, like, you know, but
the
other way around.
Guy, he just mows the lawn.
You're the lawn guy.
No, but it's the other way around. So the new people are these city folk. All right. They're the ones corrupted by the wealth
West.
of the West and their lackeys. They're the ones who are decadent, newfangled looking and everything too. It's like a boomer sort of thing. It's like these are the ones with the long hair and they
blue hair and
gave
pronouns,
speeches and
baby.
stuff too. Yeah, they were like, you can't tell which of them are men or women because they were very traditionalist. So the old people were the good ones. The old people upheld the admirable ways of the peasantry. They worked hard. They looked after each other. They were the true, peasants, and thus the spirit of the revolution.
Weird. I mean, I love a peasant. Like, I like Mao's kind of whole deal and incorporating them more, and I think that's a good instinct.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a weird tack to take. That's a weird interpretation of that.
I agree, and I think that it's not just weird. It is weird. Like, it's just weird.
It's detrimental.
And I shouldn't say weird, maybe, but it's like not our culture, right? So that does not make sense to us. Whereas it may very well make sense in the Cambodian sense at the time well, that's our history. That's where we come from. That's generations, okay.
I guess when I say weird, I mean maybe it seems like it could be detrimental. Like, if your plan is to eventually industrialize your fucking agriculture, like, you're gonna need cities, guys. Like, you can't just do that anywhere unless you're going full anarchist, which it sounds like you don't want to do because you're already showing some authoritarian streaks.
Yeah, and I'm very much of that mind that it's not useful because you threw the Marxism part out. Like, don't do that. Okay, who's in your old people group, right? You have a lot of peasants and stuff, right? But you also probably have some, quote unquote peasants who own land and work it, but also hire other people. The Russians call them kulaks, right? You probably also have that. They're not supposed to be in your class. Like, they're not on your side, but you got them with you.
But didn't they take their land away?
Yeah, that's true. I guess you don't have very many of those guys.
Yeah.
Or not for long. But the worst part is that in your new people, okay, all right, you have you hold over lackeys from the law and all and all that, sure. But you also have like regular workers. You also have just like service workers, industrial workers, people who could be on your side.
Yeah.
But, you've said, no, they're the new people. They're not good. It's like in American modern discourse, how they say like coastal elites and stuff like that. It's like
definitely.
It's not class. Like, it's not a class analysis. That's not a class. You can't say, oh, you're in the coastal elite class. It's not right.
I was thinking about that generation theory and like how it is divisive in that way and not a class way. And it is, to me, like, I was like, it all comes down to fucking demographics. Like, they want to figure out how to, like, analyze and buy and sell to us. So, like, that's the way they figured out they can do it. They want to do that without, like, getting to class.
Parenti said it best. Anything but class.
ABCs. Not the ABCs I'll be teaching my child. They will learn, hold on, let me think of an A. Anarchism, Bolshevikism, and I almost said Kropotkin. That's a K. Communism, there we go. I don't know why I went to a different one. Those are the ABCs of my future household.
Nice.
Hi, Luna. We have a special guest.
Hey, Looney.
Should we do the Lunar Ranger poll with our listeners?
No, I don't want to hear it.
Okay.
Her name is Luna. If you think her name should be Ranger, you're incorrect.
You're incorrect. Sorry. This is a popular theory amongst our friends, and I refuse to believe it.
But you're entitled to be wrong. It's fine.
That's fine. We're not going to make you change clothes into peasant clothes or anything.
Well, it was worse than that. So if you got into the new people category, if you were seen as, which is just any of the city dwellers, and then anyone who was seen as being like them or having tendencies of them, it could be broad. And it includes, because remember we said that they have this, just racism part added on to it. Those are not old people either. Yeah, if you found yourself in those groups, things are really bad for you.
Okay, so ethnic groups, probably intellectuals.
Mm-hmm.
Also weird because their leadership came from that. So, like, weird move.
Also weird that in terms of the ethnic groups, because...
Well, yeah, that too.
Well, but I mean, many of the top leadership position people were, like, of mixed heritage.
And, I mean, you just got through, like, getting your ass saved by Vietnam. So, like, stupid move.
That one's more, like, historical, like, really long-term, in terms of getting dominated back and forth back in the day.
Yeah, I guess
culturally, but also... They, even more recently, they still have that rivalry of like, maybe they're going to try to put us into their little federation and we'll just be junior partner. So, I mean, I get that. That's not like,
not
cool,
to justify.
That's fine, do racism, but...
That's fine. You heard it here first. That's the quote, do racism.
That's fine, do racism. All right, what's next? They were very brutal toward their enemies. The... Khmer Rouge, when they take power and they do the evacuations, lots of people die, but they start setting stuff up. They start building their farms and doing things, trying to rebuild. They also renamed the country Democratic Kampuchea and start about the process of eliminating their enemies. So these new people, one of the things that happened to them was being used as a labor source. Everybody was, but they were targeted in terms of like, you were going to have to work more. You were going to have to do the hardest physical labor. You were going to be sent to the worst parts of the country where, you die of disease and stuff like that, or it's just more inhospitable. You got less rations, all this shit.
That sucks.
Yeah, it was not good. This is basically forced labor, which, okay, forced labor is not good. Capitalism always does forced labor. It's threat of starvation.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that this is good either. New people could be summarily executed.
Ugh.
They just didn't have the same tier of rights. They were not what you called full rights members, which were the old people.
So, like, I don't know, we kind of already talked about how it seems like a nebulous term, but in practice, like, how did that work? Was it just like someone declared you that? Was that like...
Yes. I mean, they put you like on lists and they meticulously tracked. This is impressive because of like how shitty of a situation they were in.
Yeah, that you still took the time to like enforce racism. Great.
Yeah. Well, they set up like, a secret police, an intense state security apparatus that got really granular, got really like grassroots, and they set up like kind of neighborhood or village level committees basically to be able to kind of monitor people and stuff.
Ooh, okay.
And even in the city evacuation stuff, they had people when they got to the villages away from the city, they had them like write a little biography. Who were your parents? How did you grow up? Like where?
Oh God.
What were you doing in this during the previous regime? All that stuff.
Oh, that sucks.
So they kind of got to determine based on that where people should be, and in addition to like just the forced labor and things like that, any sort of perceived opposition or real opposition that did happen could get you sent into the prison / torture and execution sector of the government.
It sounds like they're very traditionalist in a lot of ways. I'm gonna guess they like were very shitty about like gender, I'm assuming, and like, I mean, if you're racist, I'm just making some assumptions here.
Yeah. One of the things that they were very traditional about was marriage and sexual relations. And liberated areas during the Civil War strongly encouraged these morals, basically, and said like, hey, you better not have premarital sex or, anything like that. And then this was more strictly enforced once they were in government.
Yeah, I don't think these guys are communists.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing some very uncommunist things.
Yeah.
I think they did a few communist things. I mean, they did the land reform.
I mean, yeah, but they did some really bad stuff.
They talked bad about capitalists.
Yeah, that's good.
And about people living in cities, which doesn't really relate, but...
No.
Yeah, no, I mean, they were very strict about that. Sex outside of marriage, so not just before marriage, I guess outside of marriage in general, punishable by execution.
What the fuck? You can't be a slut?
No slutting.
What the fuck?
It was based on an idealized conception of the attitudes of pre-war rural Cambodia.
Oh my god.
Also, marriage required permission from the authorities.
Weird. Okay.
So you had to go say, hey, can we, do you think this is cool? Do you think we're a good match?
Weird.
And they like analyze your horoscope.
Oh my gosh. We've been watching the Indian Matchmaker show.
Oh no, I hated that.
Oh.
Apparently, they were also very, which this is not, I don't think this is traditional. This is where they come with the idealized thing, is that they were opposed to the traditional Cambodian extended family unit. They wanted small nuclear units of parents and children.
You gotta adapt your ideology to, the culture, for one thing. And for another, the nuclear family is, a product of capitalism, I would say.
Yeah, they didn't read Engels, as far as
No.
Very pro-natalist, though. They were super into producing more children.
That's what I was wondering.
So, not good policies there.
It'd be easier for me, instead of strikes, to find things that I like about this guy.
Yeah, it's not a good project, really.
Just fail it out of the class.
Yeah, so that wasn't good. Education-wise, basically, they did primary education. They wanted to do primary education or whatever, but higher education was they didn't care about that. And they were kind of suspicious toward people in that regard. They were like, "Ooh, you're an intellectual," like you said. That was definitely a new person sort of thing. Literary schooling above primary grades was basically just no. You have literacy, that's it.
Cool. Enough to count the beans or whatever it is you're farming.
Yeah. Pretty much the only exception to this, because, also another thing to note is that they're not great at governing the whole country. They don't these laws and stuff that we're talking about are unequally applied. So they'll be super strict some places and not super strict in other places.
Okay.
One of the patterns that you see is that in the region of the country, the eastern zone that's kind of closer to Vietnam, they more align with more Vietnamese policies. So they tend to be less ridiculous. And they have contact with the party there. And they're like, well, why don't we do full literacy and education and shit? That's good, So they have a more organized education system. Actually, got textbooks and shit.
Yeah. So you want to live in the eastern area?
Yeah, if you could, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's sort of a not ginned up completely because there was that anti-intellectual streak, but there's a amplified exaggeration of if you even wore glasses, they would kill you. And this probably happened in some places, I'm sure, because it was so crazy all throughout. But it doesn't seem like they were really going for the glass extermination move. I didn't see that anywhere in the regular stuff. That was more of maybe a legend thing. But this stuff was really difficult to look at. And like I said, when you end up in the torture or prison or execution situation, it was really bad. And
yeah,
we won't detail it. There was one particular place. It's now called the Tuol Sleng Genocide Museum. It's back in the day, it was called Tuol Sleng, also called Security Prison 21. A former high school, so high school reunion would be awkward going back there.
Oof, God.
But basically this was a torture and execution center for the regime. About 20,000 people were imprisoned there or went through it. Cambodia is known, in addition to the Vietnam relationship thing, there's also the Cambodian genocide, which is happening at this time.
Okay, so what's that?
So this is where lots of people die.
I mean, yeah, it's a genocide. That is what happens.
The Cambodian genocide is just referring to the number of people who are killed, whether via execution or what is termed excess deaths during this time period. It's contentious sometimes. All right, we mentioned that Chomsky got in trouble with it. Other people have for various aspects of it. The Cambodian genocide is very specific terminology that focuses in just on the time period of democratic Kampuchea, of the Khmer Rouge. It does not include all the U.S. bombings or Lon Nol, any of that. So it's just when they're in power. It's estimated anywhere from like 1.2 is like a little low. 1.5 is like the lowest generally accepted one, up to like 2 as like the higher generally accepted. I'm picturing like one of those bar and whisker graphs, I guess, because then you have like the upper estimates that you see of like 3. That's the range. You're talking in a country of like 8 million people. So however you slice that, that's a lot.
So correct me if I'm wrong here. I was under the impression genocide is generally ethnically focused. I mean, it sounds like they definitely targeted ethnic groups in this, but is that, you think, a correct term? Or, I mean, here's the deal. Either way, no matter how you slice it, numbers-wise and name-wise, it's bad. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, so generally you would refer to like you're trying to wipe out a group of people based on ethnicity or religion or something like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I tend not to think that class position is really something you can genocide someone on. But then again, they're not really doing that. We just said they're not really analyzing by class. They just have these broad categories of people.
I mean, if you think about it, if you think about Nazism, that includes other broad categories of people too, besides Jewish people. Like they also, got rid of gays. They got rid of like different religious groups, but like and intellectuals, like they did that kind of stuff too. Yeah,
that's also a point of debate is the Holocaust. Some people say it's got to be that term specifically refers to the Jews part and not the other victims of the Nazi regime, which is everything from political prisoners to gay people to Polish people to there's all sorts of other groups and Soviets in their prisoner of war camps and everything. Yeah, there's a debate on that too. There's a lot of ethnic cleansing going on in the Cambodian genocide. There's the classicide section of it as well. There's religious groups. There's just, political opponents in general. It's horrific stuff. Like you said, I basically agree that it's just like really bad.
It's bad no matter what you call it, yeah.
Like, sure, go and hang you a few capitalists. I mean, it's fine. Yeah, but parody. But but just like wholesale, one of the things that Cambodia is known for in the Cambodian genocide is the killing fields.
Yeah, what are those?
So one of the things they would do is take people out to execution locations, just places to execute them and put them in a ditch and bury them. The victims of this were often killed without like guns. And the easiest way or the cheapest way that they found to do this was by just using like a pickaxe.
Fuck.
To like save on the bullets.
Fuck.
So that happened to a lot of people. This is once you get to that stage. They would also, go after people's families. And the crazy thing is that they do have really detailed records of this stuff at those prisons and the torture execution centers, places like Tuol Sleng. They actually like just kept records on people. It was like, at this hour, we came in and talked to him about this. We told him this. We said like, hey, it's, have you heard about your wife? Or, what about your kids? You better tell us what we need to know and all this stuff. I watched a really short documentary by the journalist John Pilger Australian journalist. It was like a TV special thing from back in 1979 called Year Zero. You're going to, for emotional impact, it's powerful. We have more details in this episode than I think the documentary had, but I thought it was really hard to hear people talking about the genocide and their experience in the prisons and torture and things like that.
I don't know if this is a stupid question, but how did this happen? Like, how was it just that Pol Pot was so, like, firmly in power there wasn't a way to get him out of it? Like, how did it break bad so badly?
Their enemy, the previous regime, Lon Nol, had basically no support and was held up by American aid and weapons. And their army crumbled and was destroyed by Pol Pot's army and the communist army there. Or the quote-unquote communists, as we should call them, I guess, because of how they carry it out. They had been flooded. I mean, they had so much in terms of weapons. They are just an incredibly formidable force in the country.
They're just the only game in town.
And they initially do some popular things. We don't like what they're doing in some respects in regards to like traditionalism and things like that. But like you said, there was that age-old peasant versus city resentment that was kind of popular. If you weren't the new people, that wasn't so bad. I mean, it does get bad. I mean, it's not great anyway because lots of people are starving and stuff. But there was an element, and later regimes kind of had to deal with this awkwardly. There was an element of popularity behind it because of what they did for like the peasants and stuff.
Yeah. So did the peasants see any improvements?
It depended on where you were, and
if you weren't new.
Right, and what's your circumstances, basically, right? If you had a lot of land before, not so good. If you didn't have any, it could be better for you. And you weren't new in any way.
Yeah, geez. I mean, this sounds like fascism again, honestly. Like, that's how that shakes out, is if you have vastly different experiences based on your life circumstances, then, yeah, that's a fucking problem.
In-group, out-group. So what this is Nazbol stuff.
What's that?
Nazi plus Bolshevik.
Oh, I hate that. Hate that combo.
It's just an internet ideology. No one is really that, but
hopefully not.
It's just something you see on such poisoned places as PCM. Oh, if you were a new person, your healthcare facilities were downgraded. You didn't get to go to like hospitals. It's not that there were very many hospitals, but still.
Fuck.
You got to do traditional herbal remedies and just, whatever you can find. Religion, you had the right to practice whatever religion unless it was like incorrect or bad for the country.
Okay, what does that mean?
So they were kind of, and this is kind of weird because they were kind of anti-monk and like targeted like Buddhism, which is the religion there, like 85% of people. They like defrocked monks and stuff and
Fuck.
Executed some of them and defaced things. They also went after like Catholics, Muslims, really anybody.
Yeah, they shouldn't like religion.
Yeah, which I mean, that's another one where you probably should adapt it more to what people like. All right, now we get to talk about why they are no longer around.
Yeah, I'd love to get rid of these guys.
Yeah, obviously this caused a lot of pain and suffering for people.
Yeah, fuck these guys.
They add a little sprinkle of foreign policy to this as well.
Great, how does that go?
Well, they start antagonizing Vietnam some more.
Cool.
Remember that rivalry that's been brewing? Been setting it up all season long. So for the finale, they start doing some border skirmishes, basically. It's like they just go like attack Vietnamese villages and like kill people there.
That's stupid.
Because the whole time, I mean, they've been instigating this racial violence in their own country and everything and saying, look at these people, they're terrible, they're working with the Vietnamese. Why don't we go attack some of the Vietnamese.
Oh
So they
my
start
God.
doing these border raids, basically. Once Vietnam has, they've gotten the Americans to leave by now. They've conquered and reunited their country. They have been rebuilding in a real painful way because of the international sanctions put on them by the U.S. And now they're just getting attacked by this dude. And they're like, what? Are you serious?
Come on, we're kind of busy.
But it keeps happening, so they invade. Vietnam invades Cambodia to put a stop to the raids, but then also just to go ahead and oust the Khmer Rouge because they're really shitty. And, I mean, you constantly throughout this, you have Vietnamese Cambodians, coming over, fleeing, refugees, coming over and telling them, like, it's a fucking bloodbath,
Wow. I mean, again, usually not pro-invasion, but, that's fine. Let's get rid of these guys. They fucking suck.
There you go. So they invade. And they overthrow the democratic Kampuchean government.
Yeah, real quick, were they democratic at all? Not that it matters because they were so shitty, but while we're here.
Oh, elections and stuff?
Yeah.
It does say that they had elections, I guess. Secret ballot, direct general elections to the Kampuchean People's Representative Assembly.
I bet the new people couldn't vote.
New people could not vote. No, definitely not. They had 250 members. 150 were reserved for representatives of the peasants, 50 for the laborers and other working people, and 50 for the army. They were elected for 5-year terms, with the first and only elections taking place on March 20th, 1976. You got to last longer than that to get a second round. You had 515 candidates for the 250 seats. They were all from the National United Front of Kampuchea, so sort of like a block system like that. Voter turnout was reported to be 98%.
Cool. I mean, what else are you doing?
Maybe not. Probably not. I'm not going to claim that it was legitimate because I don't really want to give these guys benefit of the doubt in most things.
Yeah, I got a feeling if you fucked up somehow, either by not voting or voting the wrong way, I think you'd be taking a trip to the killing fields.
New people. We went from old to new.
Anyway, invasion time.
Whoa. Oh, they get overthrown in 2 weeks.
Okay, your place is really fucked up. If it takes 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks, blam. They're flattened. And the way this goes down is like a lot of former Khmer Rouge, actually, have been defecting over this time period.
Good.
Yeah, basically they're like, this is not what we were supposed to be doing, y'all. Like, this is wrong.
This
This is not what I signed up for. They're defecting to Vietnam. All right, because they've been comrades before. They've been there for the whole struggle, even though there's been this rivalry, and they see them as like, they could potentially help out again.
Yeah. Like, hey, sorry that went so off the rails. I'm back.
They form the Kampuchean United Front for National Salvation. It doesn't have a cool acronym.
Oh, okay.
But this is like former Khmer Rouge that have defected, and it's all Cambodians in exile in Vietnam or having fled there, but that want to free their country, basically. And so they're the ones who are like the head of the Vietnamese like the Vietnamese army is the one doing it, but these guys are who end up being the new regime that's put into place.
Is the reason it's so short because like you have these former people who are like, yeah, I know how to get in?
I don't know how much of the generaling they were doing. I think it was mostly that Cambodia was in complete shambles at that point.
Okay.
It's a cakewalk for them, and Vietnam's army was just way stronger than Cambodia's at any point in time. They set up a new government there, the People's Republic of Kampuchea. This is in 1979. Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge leadership go into exile.
Good.
And they start up a guerrilla war against the new government.
Not good.
Yeah, they are not alone in that. They get help.
Oh, no. Who helps them?
So, for one, China helps them.
Okay, why?
The Khmer Rouge, this is where we said that the Sino-Soviet split comes into play.
Fuck.
So, the party got a lot of help in the early days from the Vietnamese, right? And the Vietnamese gradually, they cooperate with China in regards to, like, the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, they don't really like each other because the Vietnamese are more pro-Soviet. And Cambodia has already been kind of playing the different sides of China, Vietnam. You know, they've done that before. And the leadership of the Khmer Rouge gradually, as their resentment to the junior partner role of Vietnam grows, they kind of start shifting more and more to be pro-Chinese.
Okay. God damn that Sino split.
Yeah, and it's not. Sometimes people will characterize Pol Pot as a Maoist.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if you look at what he did / the Khmer Rouge did in practice, while they did a little bit of talking about the peasants and stuff, their ideology was completely crappy. I don't know, like
It's fucked.
They just had all this bullshit in there, and they had the racism in there. Sorry, they had Orion's jingling collar in there. They had everything, man, and the whole old people, new people thing.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
Is a lesson on the importance of ideology or theory, because otherwise you come up with fucking stupid stuff.
Yeah, it's an importance on intersectionality and solidarity too.
Yeah, and so I wouldn't call him a Maoist.
No.
I wouldn't do that to my Maoist comrades. Stick you with this guy. But they did have this more pro-China alliance. All right. And this is in 1979, by which point China was under the leadership of Deng Xiaoping. You know, Mao was gone.
Yeah, yeah.
And so now they were, I don't know if they had started quite yet, their reforms and stuff and opening up and all that, but they were on the way to it. You know, they were changing.
They're about to do some bullshit.
Yeah, and even, you know, in the 70s when Mao was like opening up to, was talking with, establishing relations with the U.S. anyway, and seeing them as a counter to the Soviets because of that stupid Sino-Soviet split.
So it's not a good look, is the point.
It's not a good look. No, and the Sino-Soviet split is so frustrating because it's, because they
we
end
should
up.
do a whole episode on it.
We really should, because it's just a bizarre
It's
situation.
one of those things, like the Spanish Civil War, it always fucking pops up and fucks things up.
Yeah, and it just has all these wide-ranging effects. But so the Khmer Rouge end up getting support from China, getting support from the United Kingdom.
They're always the good guys.
Right? Yeah. They send the SAS over to help train Khmer Rouge guerrillas.
What is that? Is that like their CIA?
No, it's like their Navy SEALs, I guess.
Okay, so still bad.
Yeah. They're the group that you play as in Call of Duty if you're on the British team. Like they're the SAS.
Never had the pleasure.
Really? Seemed like your kind of game.
Not my jam, surprisingly.
Margaret Thatcher, famously, when asked about this,
Friend of the show.
said, yeah, well, she had a
Piss on her grave.
typical response of, there are also good and moderate Khmer Rouge.
Okay. That's fucking hilarious. Because, like, these are the people that conservatives hold up as, like, what communism is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is their bad guy example, I feel like. Not besides Stalin. Like, I feel like another common one I hear is like, well, it'll just turn into Pol Pot. But when they're helping them, it's like, no, they're fine.
No, it's fine. Yeah, they're good. And he was, like, still alive and, like, doing this stuff with them. Pol Pot died, when did he die? 1998.
Jeez.
So they get help from China, from the UK. They also get help from the US.
My favorite.
Yeah.
My favorite country.
The US encouraged China to provide military support to the Khmer Rouge. They also provided arms. There's dispute on whether they provided arms or not, but like, I'm pretty sure that
Yeah, I'm sure they did.
that they did that. Oh, Henry Kissinger, friend of the show.
Piss on his grave when it finally appears.
Still not dead. Still not dead.
I know. Oh my God. That's going to be a good day, though. We should get drunk on that day.
I mean, kind of, but again, it's a consolation prize. Unless someone shoots him, parody.
Yeah.
Don't do it. It's illegal. Yeah, and even then, it has to be like immolates him. Like, you know, it has to like really go out badly for it to be worth it.
He trips on a banana peel into a volcano made of shit.
Yeah, like, because otherwise
it's peaceful.
Yeah. Surrounded by loved, I don't know if he can love, but still surrounded by people who claim to love him.
Yeah.
Anyway, he told the foreign minister of Thailand, "You should tell the Cambodians that we will be friends with them," meaning the Khmer Rouge like regime at that time. You should tell them we will be friends with them. They are murderous thugs, but we won't let that stand in our way.
But so are we, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Same. I think we have a lot in common, actually.
Right? So, I mean, there's this record of just tacit support, but there's also probably, you know, covert military support that also went in, and arms deals and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
In addition to that, which China also, we said they were supporting them with arms. They also invaded Vietnam, like, in a punitive invasion for this. They were just like, you guys, how dare you do that? They just invaded them real quick. It was like a month of invasion. And it just went right back to where, well, basically because it got bogged down. The Vietnamese army fought them off to a standstill. And they didn't want to put that much more into it, so they backed out.
Good, jeez.
Yeah, but they basically did that to punish them for invading Cambodia. Well, for liberating Cambodia from Pol Pot. Another way that these powers helped the Khmer Rouge versus the new People's Republic of Kampuchea was to keep the People's Republic out of the UN. So for a long time, it's until 1993 that the Khmer Rouge government, which had been kicked out, is in exile, forms the Coalition Government of Democratic Kampuchea, which, by the way, teamed up with our old pal Sihanouk. And they said, "Oh, Sihanouk, go up to the UN, man, and vouch for us and tell them that we're good."
Wait. Sihanouk was teaming up with
the Khmer Rouge.
Oh my God.
Again.
Yeah, I guess he did do that before.
Oh yeah. Do you know what happened to him? I left this out earlier.
Yeah, what did he do while they were in power?
Right, when they're in power, he's there for like a year before he resigns because basically he finds out about all what they're doing, and it's too much for him. He resigns, and they put him under house arrest.
Okay. Weird that they killed all those like regular ass people, but decided to keep the former king alive.
Well, to be fair, this is that cultural thing again. The
popular king.
Yeah, the general Lon Nol from before, when he did the coup, it was like the next day or the day of, I don't know, it was very soon that he went to like the Queen Mother and begged her forgiveness for doing a coup against her son.
I'm so sorry I did a coup. That was a total accident. My bad. I burst into the room with a gun. I fell into the room. I don't even know how I got the gun in my hands. And then I sneezed and it sounded a lot like, I'm here to take over. And it worked. I didn't even mean to.
Yeah.
But, you know, no takesies backsies.
So that was what happened to him. But after he teams up with these guys, takes power, and they end up putting under house arrest, then when they're in exile, he goes back to them and is like, oh, yeah, let's work together. Let's get this thing back from the Vietnamese.
Okay, sorry. Can you just give me the timeline of when Vietnam invaded versus this asking for recognition from the UN thing?
Okay, so that was immediate.
Okay.
1979 is when they set up the People's Republic of Kampuchea. And then there's the dispute. Are they going to be the UN seat, or is it going to be the old Khmer Rouge government, where they've formed a coalition with freaking Sihanouk, the coalition government or whatever. And the U.S. and China both said, no, it's not going to be the People's Republic. We're going to keep the Pol Pot regime plus Sihanouk. We're going to give them the UN seat. Sihanouk, to his credit, does get out of this partnership pretty quickly. So he does vouch for him. He's like, oh yeah, like we should be the real government. But then he's like, oh, never mind. Like, you guys are
actually, they suck.
Yeah. It's not too much to his credit because the damage was done. But yeah, they are, in terms of international recognition, the People's Republic of Kampuchea is like fucked, like from day one in terms of that. Like, they're getting aid from Vietnam, despite at this time Vietnam going through its own shit.
Yeah, for real.
They are both on the wrong end of international sanctions, embargoes,
Oh, my God.
For a while, Vietnam's able to help Kampuchea sustain it and militarily occupy it. They're able to support that for a while, but with the decline and fall of the Soviet Union, as that starts happening, Vietnam has to start doing reforms within itself, basically because they're losing money, because the Soviets were giving them aid, a little chain of aid. So as that dried up, because the Soviets were like, hey, we're pulling out of everything, we're not doing as much foreign aid to people, that really cut Vietnam's bottom line. So they had to do their doi moi reforms of opening up and just doing more capitalism, basically. And with that, they were like, hey, we've got to cut the military a lot in terms of this big, huge, costly occupation. So yeah, they retreated from Cambodia. That was in the 80s. And it's kind of a weird time. So like late 80s, 1989, they changed the name of the People's Republic of Kampuchea to the State of Cambodia. And this is when they make the transition from a one-party Marxist-Leninist state, which is what you had People's Republic of Kampuchea being.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that was the one that Vietnam set up. And they just set it up like Vietnam.
Like theirs. They're like, do you want to do this one? We have this government. Do you want it?
So it's a socialist government. I mean, they're doing things right. They're trying to rebuild, basically. They have the support of Vietnam, the Soviet Union, the Eastern European socialist countries too.
Were they decently popular in Kampuchea? Like amongst the people? Because he said the Khmer Rouge were like a little bit weirdly popular.
Yeah, that's one of the things is that it depended on who you were. Again, if you're a minority freed from ethnic cleansing, yeah, you're pretty popular.
I'm a fan.
But one of the things that they didn't like to discuss, they get asked by the press sometimes, is about like the former regime, the Khmer Rouge's popularity among the peasantry in particular. And they were just like, change the subject, please. Let's not talk about that.
No.
They kept having to fight this guerrilla force. See, the Khmer Rouge rebels and stuff, they would set up. Now they were setting up on the Thailand border because Thailand let them set up stuff like that because it was essentially a U.S. puppet. I was
going to say, yeah, I'm pretty sure they were bad guys at that point.
Yeah. And so they were just basically doing cross-border raids and stuff to attack the government. And the government there was like setting up all these defenses. It was this whole big thing. The point is it was super expensive, and they basically had to transition out of that as the Soviet Union, as their sugar daddy collapsed.
Pouring out for our sugar daddy.
Yeah.
Still waiting on that gold, Moscow. Come on. I will accept it in fancy jewelry.
Yeah, I've been giving them a bar here, a bar there to get by, but I can't keep us both afloat forever.
For real. These web hosting fees don't pay themselves.
They don't call us champagne socialists for nothing.
I do like a good brute.
So yeah, they start transitioning away from that toward the restoration of capitalism. There are very complex things that go into this, but I'm just treating this very broad strokes because it's like the aftermath, just to let you know what happens in Cambodia afterward. There's a period from 1992 to 1993 where they are directly administered by the UN to oversee like elections and stuff to set up the new government. Because what they end up doing in 1993 is resetting up the Kingdom of Cambodia.
Okay, there it is. I was wondering. I'm like, well, considering who their UN representatives were and like all those dealings, it's not going to be a socialist one.
So yeah, they set the monarchy back up. And after all that has gone down, It's a constitutional monarchy, but it still has a monarchy. And Sihanouk was king.
Oh my God, he's back. This fucker just won't give up.
Yeah. So they set up an elective monarchy.
How does that work?
So it's like the government, I think. Or they actually have a council
It's like the government.
They have a council of some government leaders or whatever that are the electors of the monarchy. So they don't go vote. You don't vote for a king. And yeah, his Sihanouk's son is actually their current king.
Oh, fuck. Okay, so still going strong.
Yeah, Sihanouk passed in 2012.
That's very recent.
The current king, Norodom Sihamoni, that's his son.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but like I said, it is constitutional. So they do have a parliament that actually runs things. It is run by the Cambodian People's Party, which is kind of an interesting side note, I guess, because when they set up the People's Republic of Kampuchea, the Vietnamese, the one that they helped liberate them and set up, right? The Cambodian People's Party is descended from the Kampuchean People's Revolutionary Party. This was, complicated history, but it was back at the top of the show, was the original spin-off of the Indo-Chinese Communist Party.
Okay. So they've got those roots. Now, Are they actually communist, socialists? What's their deal?
That went in two directions. So once it split off from Indo-Chinese Communist Party, some of it became Communist Party of Kampuchea. That was the main thing, right? And that became Khmer Rouge, all that. But this one is almost, it's not split so much as a reboot. This harkens back to that, but it is the party made up of former Khmer Rouge members that had fled to Vietnam.
Yeah, they're like, hey, fuck this.
Yeah, so that's those guys, and they're the ruling party of the dominant party of the People's Republic of Kampuchea, the Vietnamese setup. So they, by this point, once they're in the Kingdom of Cambodia, and even before in the state of Cambodia and stuff, once they switch over to being Cambodian People's Party and everything, along the way, they abandoned Marxist-Leninist ideology altogether. In 1991, they officially dropped their commitment to socialism in general.
I mean, you got a king, so.
Yeah. This is a wild one on Wikipedia. It describes their ideology. 1951 to 1991. Communism, Marxism, Leninism. Since 1991, conservatism, national conservatism, and economic liberalism.
Okay, no. It's a wild turn.
Yeah, so they're not the same anymore.
It's, just same name, different party.
Yeah. But that's essentially what I've got for the history of Cambodia. Like I said, there's tons more, but I really wanted to focus in mostly on the Khmer Rouge stuff, mostly on the Democratic Kampuchea stuff, the causes, the effects, all that.
That's fucking rough, and this guy gets a negative rating. I mean, it would be easier to count things he didn't fuck up than than strikes, So, fuck that guy. Fuck all that. I will not claim him as a communist.
I think he's a bad communist. Obviously, but he just, the fundamentals, too, of, class conflict. That's, I hate that he did the racism stuff, too. That's really bad. But as far as analyzing someone's economy, you can be a racist communist. It makes you a bad communist. But, if you basically have a class analysis, but also you're a racist, you just suck. But, you're a communist.
I don't know if that's true. Because I think, and maybe this is a newer definition of communist, but based on what I've learned over the course of doing this show, I would say we have seen time and time again that racism is inherently linked to capitalism, and a great way to start sussing out who isn't on your side is to point out the racists. I think to me, this reeks more of fascism than communism. I think this is, I think we know the importance of solidarity, and we know the importance of, and how race plays into class tensions. So, I mean, in my definition of communist, I don't think you can be racist and communist. Maybe personally prejudiced and like, yeah, you got to work on your shit.
Like you just have
but
to
I don't think you can enforce racist policies and be a good communist or a communist, really.
That's a good point. I think you're right that a little class reductionist to just say it's all about your class analysis. You got to also be with the overall struggle.
I mean, yeah, I'd say the same thing about women too, and gender politics. I mean, if you want to go at it from a theory perspective, like, yeah, it's in the text, but also like overall, we know that those are tendencies that belong with fascism and conservatism and capitalism, and they don't belong in communism. You're limiting your workforce. You are, advocating for the nuclear family, like all things that we don't want to do. Yeah,
and to tie it back in, I guess, it does come to that question of which side are you on?
Exactly.
Are you with the oppressed people of the world, or are you with the oppressors?
He's doing a lot of oppressing, and not of the cool landlord oppressing that we like.
And that's where you tie it in, and that's where you're wrong to say that you can be a communist, but just add in some racism. Yeah, you're right.
Thanks.
You can't do that. You have to be on the right side. Like, right, what good does it do you to understand the theory, to have all the right ideas, to be like, oh, I know all about the labor theory of value and whatnot, and you do everything good on that side. But if you're not really actually like fighting for the downtrodden, are you a communist? And the answer is no, I guess. Right?
I don't think you can be. I am going to kick him out of the club. His membership card has been revoked. Dang. It is no longer valid.
Turn in your black tunic. Turn in your tire sandals and your red scarf.
Any books that you checked out from the Communist Book Club, please return those.
We demand our Young Pioneers pin back.
Yeah, you don't get the pin. You don't get the gold bar, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I like that as a note to end on.
All right. Cancel him. Throw out the whole man.
The entire Pol Pot.
Yes. Dump out that pot. Next week, we are talking about eco-communism and how it can sometimes turn into eco-fascism, I guess. Not necessarily, but just the relationship between various ecological movements and like what's a good way to approach them and what's a not so good way to approach them.
Excellent.
All right. Join us next time
on Dragon Ball Z.
We're going to keep yelling. We're going to keep charging our Kamehamehas. It's going to be great.
All right. Catch you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Hey there, comrades. Just jumping in to remind you of all of our social media. We are on Twitter at teachcommunism, Instagram at teachmecommunism. You can shoot us an email. That's teachmecommunism@gmail.com. Any of those places are good to send us an episode suggestion or a question, anything you think would be useful feedback for us, or just your admiration. If you want to admire us in a public manner, and you should, you can go to Apple Podcasts to give us a review. It is the best way to help people find the show. Love when people write and review us. Please do both. We are also on YouTube, if that's how you prefer to listen to podcasts, or if you know someone that's the only way they'll listen to podcasts, send them to our page. And we have a Patreon. For $5 a month, you get access to our notes for each week's episode, including the backlog of notes, which is a very handy resource for up-and-coming commies. And at the end of the year, all of the funds from Patreon will be given to local mutual aid in the DFW area. So, ain't going to line our pockets. Finally, we have merch. Check us out at TeePublic. You can find shirts and I believe also stickers and magnets and all kinds of fun stuff with catchphrases from the show or episode art, stuff like that. The link to that store is in the show notes, so check that out. Okay, that's all the internet. Join us next time for another episode of Teach Me Communism, where the class struggle is always in session. Bye, y'all.